Welcome to the Pump Fake, everybody. I'm Jarrett Bailey, USA Today. That's my friend Tom Hannifan. It's good to see you, fella. How are you?
I'm good. I'm a little sleepy today, but other than that, I'm just like everybody else. This is football season's right around the corner, and it's like great. We can go back to real sports, and it's my favorite thing. It's the best.
Exactly. Tom Hannifan, host of State of State, voice of Impact Wrestling. It's always good to do stuff with you. Today, focusing on the Penn State side of things, as college football is right around the corner. Um, you and I mean, you went to Penn State. I've been a Penn State fan my entire life. So that's something that we have a shared bond over is the love of Penn State football. And this season, especially, I mean, the AP poll just came out today. Penn State ranked 7th in the preseason poll. There's a lot of expectations, which is something that, yeah, when you go into a season, Penn State has been a team that has kind of been on that watch list. Oh, Ohio State, Michigan, but Penn State could be a spoiler. But now it feels like there's real expectations of, okay, Penn State can win the Big Ten, which is something we haven't seen in 5-6 years.
Yeah, it's an interesting season altogether. I think there's still plenty of people nationally and then even within the Big Ten that are looking at Penn State as still the number 3 team, and Ohio State and Michigan have staked their claim, rightfully so, as the 1 and 2 team to beat, whatever order you see that in. And I think a big reason why there is vulnerability this year in that top 2 is because of the quarterback position at Ohio State. Now, we just don't know what we're getting out of the next Buckeye quarterback. There's an ongoing camp. No starter has been named yet. And it's a question mark of, hey, is it just going to be the next Heisman caliber guy off the assembly line? Or is the guy driving the Corvette going to kind of struggle figuring out how to run it manual or whatever the hell you want to call it, some sort of car analogy there. So I'm really curious to see what Ohio State turns into, because they go where the quarterback position goes. And it's not that they can't run the football, but they are a pass happy team now under Ryan Day. And then you look at what Michigan was able to do last season, and obviously getting to the college football playoff, their exit was disappointing to Wolverine fans. So it raises questions in terms of how far can they really go, considering the SEC looks even tougher this year than it did last year, which is saying something. In my opinion, there could be 3 to 4 teams in the SEC that could make the college football playoff. Just depends on how everything shakes out, obviously. So then coming back to Penn State, you need to beat one or both of Ohio State and Michigan to make your case, and that's not an easy task. So there's a lot of people conservatively saying, hey, Penn State will wind up probably 10-2 this year, both those losses to Ohio State and Michigan. But there's a big question mark also for Penn State at quarterback. Drew Aller, big-time 5-star recruit, hyped up, sat a lot of last season behind Sean Clifford and learned. And the anticipation is he'll be named the starter for week 1 against West Virginia. And we just don't know what we're getting. There's a lot of expectation, and, we believe we know what we're getting, but you just don't know it until it's out there on the field. So it's just one big question mark, Jarrett. It's great.
You mentioned that opening game against West Virginia on NBC, starting a new era of Big Ten football over on NBC and the old the Peacock. I love that is kind of like the inside thing that people refer to it as, because HBO became Max, and I'm all for NBC just going all in with the gag of making that the official name. But I'm liking the guys that are coming back. Obviously, Kalen King is looked at as one of the top corners in football. I want to see how Lambert Smith emerges, with the departure of Parker Washington. We're going to see right off the bat against, a West Virginia team that by no means are they a slouch. They're not, a team that's looked at as, oh man, a powerhouse, but a big primetime competition to kick off the season. What do you expect in week 1?
I expect it to be a game for 2 quarters, and then Penn State should pull away in the 3rd and 4th. This is a West Virginia team that's picked to finish dead last in the Big 12 by
that
many.
Has been the consensus, hasn't it?
Yeah, and it's rough times right now for the Big 12. A lot of change, obviously, in the Big 12, but considering some of the Power 5 or group of 5 teams that are now rounding out what was a Power 5 conference, it's not necessarily good that West Virginia is starting over. They're going to have a young quarterback no matter who they trot out there as their starter. New offensive coordinator, Graham Harrell's departed the program. So there's just some turnover there, and I don't envy anybody walking into Happy Valley week 1 in a night game to kick off the season, because Penn State fans are notorious for just They will be loud. They will be really intense that night. I think there's a lot of Penn State fans that are still pretty ticked off that the whiteout game isn't against Michigan later on in the season. And that all has to do with the TV networks picking what game they want at night, and off thing with Fox, you hit on with NBC. There's things above the normal person's pay grade that goes into those decisions. So I think this opening game is going to be a chance for the Penn State community to announce themselves nationally. And again, it comes back to Drew Aller. I just don't know necessarily what he's going to be at quarterback. West Virginia could be an inferior opponent. Defensively, they gave up a lot of points last season. So is it something where he lights them up? I don't necessarily need to see that. I just need to play soundly within the offense. 60 to 65% completion percentage, avoid turnovers. Of course, 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio would be the floor of what you hope to see from him, because the standard has been set that high. And I think the thing that Penn State has gotten back to, this hasn't really been the case for too long with James Franklin, is a really good offensive line and two excellent running backs. Now, we've seen Miles Sanders, we've seen Saquon Barkley, hell, Journey Brown as well within the Penn State running back room for a number of years. There's been talent there, but the offensive line hasn't necessarily been there to complement those stars. You have a nice offensive line this year. A lot of guys returning with experience. Singleton and Allen could start anywhere in the country. The debate of what's the best tandem in the country. I know Corum and Edwards were recently talking to Bussin' with the boys about that. All due respect to them, Singleton and Allen can contend for that title, in my opinion, but it's up for debate. So I think the positive for Drew Aller is going into this home game to open the season against West Virginia. There will be nerves, there will be jitters. It's over 107,000 people stuffed into Beaver Stadium, and rely on your running game. It's the easiest thing in the world for a quarterback to do, especially when they're young and inexperienced. And Mike Yurcich seemed to lean into that more last year, because that's not been his MO at Penn State, Ohio State, Texas, Oklahoma State. He wants to throw the football, and now he's got a guy who probably can do it better than Sean Clifford, at least after the snap. So we'll see, man. I think that West Virginia atmosphere is going to be really, really special.
And you mentioned having a nice run game is nice to lean on, but having one of the, if not the best tackle in the country, and Olu Fashanu to protect you, that's probably going to do wonders for Drew Aller as well. They don't play a ranked opponent until Iowa, September 23rd. We'll see what happens with Iowa up until that point. They play Illinois week 3 after Delaware. Illinois is a team that, for some reason, has given them fits in recent years. They had that weird 8 overtime game or whatever the hell it was.
It was 9. I went to that game. It was awful. Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that.
But I bet the under, so I did all right.
I think that the first, and we talked in the lobby about it, the first month of their season, I mean, it's pretty doable to go 4-0. I mean, maybe Iowa gives them a little bit of trouble, but we'll see. They go to Illinois, but up until they get the bye, and then UMass and Ohio State. Up until that point, I mean, very doable to go into the Ohio State game undefeated, traveling to Columbus for that.
My expectation is Penn State is undefeated heading to Columbus. I think it's October 21st against the
Correct.
Buckeyes. And that's not looking past Illinois and Iowa by any means. I think those will be difficult games. I don't think Illinois will be exactly what we saw last season. They sent a great deal of talent to the National Football League. And granted, everybody can reload with the transfer portal and NIL benefits being the way they are. Brett Bielema has that program headed in the right direction, and he likes that smash mouth style of football. On the road in Illinois, not the most intimidating environment. However, that will be the first true test for a defensive line that has some question marks at the interior. PJ Mustipher, literally and figuratively, a huge loss off to the National Football League. There just aren't a lot of guys that are 310 pounds walking this earth that can do some of the things that he did. And James Franklin has been on the record about that a number of times, where the interior of Penn State's defensive line has got to get a little bit more stout. You know what you're going to get at linebacker from Abdul Carter and Curtis Jacobs and company, but the interior of that defensive line, that's going to be their first test. And then, oh, by the way, the next week against Iowa, it's going to be another test, because that's always an excellent offensive line. That's my real only concern with Illinois, is that can you be prepared to stop the run? And if so, that's going to be a really nice early road test, again, for a young Drew Aller And let's also not forget, you talked about it a little bit, Keandre Lambert-Smith expected at wide receiver to step up. There's been a lot of positivity around Dante Cephas, transfer from Kent State. It came in a few months ago and has just gotten acclimated over the summer to the program. And a lot of people very quietly are saying he could be the real deal. A dude that was recruited by the program a number of years ago, went to Kent State, got himself some very nice numbers in the MAC. And they did something similar with this last year with Mitchell Tinsley coming from Western Kentucky. Everybody was like, is it going to transfer going from a small conference to a big conference? I believe Cephas is already on the Biletnikoff watch list. And not that those mean all that much at this point in the year, but still that is something to pay attention to, that he's getting those kinds of eyeballs. And I think the rest of that receiving core, it's just who's going to step up and make the 3, 4, 5, 6 spot theirs. Tight end, it's a jam-packed room at tight end. Theo Johnson and Tyler Warren are leading the way. So there's going to be options. So that first month, those first 6 games of the season, that's where I think a lot of jobs are still going to be fought for within this Nittany Lion football team. So my anticipation is Illinois and Iowa. Tough games, should be able to win those. I think the Iowa game, I mentioned it before, Penn State fans are disappointed that that's the whiteout game at home on September 23rd. I don't want people to look past that, and I don't know what you think about this, is that Iowa getting Cade McNamara in the transfer portal from Michigan, much bigger deal than I think people are making it out to be.
I think overall, too, like having the Illinois and Iowa games both in September definitely benefits them for the reason that you pointed out, because they are going to run the hell out of the ball. And I would much rather, as a Penn State fan, have them do that in September when you don't got to worry about too much of the sleet and the snow and the rain and the shit weather, just as a whole. Yeah. And where even when you know that, okay, they're going to run the ball, we don't know if we got the guys in the middle to take care of it. Now you got the guys on the outside in terms of Chop Robinson and Isaac, but like you mentioned, the defensive interior is going to be a little bit up in the air. So I'm excited to see that both those games are early on. You don't got to deal with, all of the bad weather where they're going to run the ball, but you still don't know if you can stop them. Yeah, I think that Iowa has those. I feel like Iowa's like an every other year team where like they'll surprise some people and go like, oh man, Iowa's 9-3. What, everybody kind of overlooked Iowa,
right? Yeah,
and then they go into the next year like, well, Iowa's 5-7 and only put up 10 points against South Dakota. What are we doing? So they are a weird program, but every once in a while, man, they have those years where they're not necessarily better than teams, but they'll hang with you. And I think weren't they one of the teams that beat Ohio State not long ago? I might be thinking of things.
I mean, night games at Kinnick in Iowa City. Those Penn State
knows joke. Plenty about night games at Kinnick, and the game where they had to win on the final play on a McSorley touchdown pass in 2017.
A lot of stress. Thank you, thank you, Juwan Johnson. Yeah, it's. Iowa is weird like that. And I think a lot of people bagged on him last year, myself included. I really enjoyed it. But yeah, I think, again, Cade McNamara, there's a lot of people that are going to be like, well, he's not this otherworldly quarterback. No, he's the right guy for the right system. In that, Michigan saw a more athletic quarterback in J.J. McCarthy, a little bit higher ceiling. You can't fault what Cade McNamara had done the season before, leading them to a Big Ten title win. He was perfect for that offense, especially it's run the football, play action pass. That's exactly what Iowa wants to do. They do not have a very talented receiving core, so it does fall on the quarterback to make really sound decisions, and it's just more conservative play calling. And then also don't forget his Michigan teammate Eric All, a tight end, came with him. So he's got some familiarity, and they love to throw to the tight end. It's become tight end U in the last 5 to 10 years. So I think that's going to be a lot more difficult than people realize. And it's, to me, Jarrett, it's like when Penn State plays Northwestern, that is a team that isn't going to beat you in terms of ability. They're going to be smarter. They're going to be more disciplined. They drag you down.
Yeah.
Iowa is a version of Northwestern, but blown up in that they have more ability. They're stronger sometimes, and they will drag you down into a leather helmet style football game. But the McNamara aspect, I think, it doesn't terrify me, but it does give me some pause going into that game.
They get all of these teams early on, because we talked already about Iowa and Illinois, but they get Northwestern September 30th. And like, these are games that usually, like you pointed out, they're going to be just ugly November Big Ten football, where, like you said, bet the under, expect a lot of running, expect some turnovers. They get all these games early. And then they have, kind of a filler game with the UMass Minutemen. Great name, by the way. Fantastic
Fabulous
mascot.
name. Fabulous.
Lovely.
Yeah.
They're
All
gonna
about
get
history.
they're gonna get curb stomped by the Nittany Lions, and that's great. And then they travel to Columbus to the Ohio State Buckeyes, who were number 3 in the preseason poll. This is like, as a Penn State fan, and you being a Penn State fan, having gone to the university as well, I think most Penn State fans go into the season of, okay, can you beat Ohio State? And they have been in situations where they could have beat Ohio State, whether it was the game in Columbus in 2018, where they just kind of fell apart in the second half, the game in 2019, where a lot of similar things happened. A questionable decision to run on what was like 4th and 5 when they were trailing to try to take the lead. There's a lot of questionable decisions that have prevented maybe them beating Ohio State in 3 consecutive years at one point. But in terms of confidence as a Penn State fan going into a season against a team like Ohio State, this is the highest it's been in a while, simply because of the question marks that they themselves have at quarterback, like we talked about. So your expectations for Ohio State and what this game could bring for Penn State. And if they do, let's say they do go into Ohio State undefeated and beat Ohio State, feels like it would take a lot for them to not make the college football playoff should the rest of the season go pretty accordingly.
Yeah, it's so difficult to say. I think of the 2 games, Penn State versus Michigan and Penn State versus Ohio State, I feel slightly more confident about Penn State versus Ohio State as a win for the Nittany Lions than I do against Michigan, in that Michigan has just thumped Penn State lately. Their style of play has been the complete polar opposite of what Penn State has been able to defend. And to Michigan's credit, they've done an excellent job. And like I mentioned, they've gotten into the college football playoff. And despite, getting bounced early last season, surprised by TCU, they showed that they can score, and they can score in bunches. Now, obviously, they've been able to score against a lot of different people, but it's the means by which Michigan does it, is that they can get a lead by running the football down your throat and rack up a lot of points. But then if they're playing from behind, that's where the pressure gets put on J.J. McCarthy, and we're going to find out what he is. But cycling back to that Ohio State game, this is going to be the perfect intersection of 2 young quarterbacks. Whoever it is that Ohio State puts out there to start for them, and again, just like I was saying, Penn State's going to be determining some jobs into that Ohio State game. There's a very good chance there's a lot of Ohio State guys that are figuring out if they're the starter going into this game, and that this is the perfect intersection. The unstoppable force meets the immovable object, and 2 young quarterbacks are going to have to figure out who's matured quicker in those first handful of weeks. That will be the biggest game of Drew Allar's life to date, and nothing against anybody on the schedule ahead of that, but still, that is a very difficult environment. The Buckeye fans will make it difficult for Aller. But again, I come back to what I was saying before. You can run the football. You can get after the quarterback. And you can play outstanding defense. You've talked about it a lot. Kalen King, Johnny Dixon, Daquan Hardy, the safeties, Keaton Ellis, Zachy Wheatley, Jalen Reed. I mean, the list goes on. And plus, there's young, talented guys that they can get into the mix. And the thing about Manny Diaz, as defensive coordinator, is that he likes to platoon guys. He will make it very difficult. And the worst thing possible for a young quarterback is sending out a lot of new jerseys that it's like, okay, I watched film on this guy, but now I got to remember what he does. Wait, no, he's out of the game. This guy's over here. What coverage is he in? They like to use the Prowler package, which I think a lot of people thought Prowler was the name of a position, but it's more positionless football. It's the NBA and the back 7 for Penn State football. And it's just a matter of who's the tip of the spear in that given play. Manny Diaz being able to make it difficult on a young quarterback is going to be a must. We know about Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka, and plenty of other options for them offensively. It's a question of, can they shut down the run against Ohio State? Ohio State does have talented backs and a very good offensive line consistently. But if you are going to put it all on a young quarterback, it feels like a shootout game to me, honestly, is that if there's a game where Drew Aller has to put on the cape and be Superman for a game, that might be it. And that's not necessarily the best environment to have to do it, but that's one of those things where we're going to find out who number 15 is pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, that could be the game where we kind of pencil in and look back on as, okay, this was kind of Drew Aller's coming out party, or, it could be, okay, this has got to be a learning experience for Aller. And then hopefully going forward, you got Indiana the following week at home. They've there's that weird 2020 year where everybody and their mother expected Penn State to walk into Indiana and win, and then they lose, and then obviously the 2020 year was really bad. Just weird in general. But they got Indiana, then they traveled to Maryland their next 2 games before hosting Michigan after that. So 2 games, 2 winnable games, 2 games I think they should win before you host JJ McCarthy, Jim Harbaugh, and the Michigan Wolverines. Again, we've already touched on it. Those are the 2 games, Michigan and Ohio State, that everybody looks at every year as, okay, if you can win at least one of those, you got a good chance to get into the playoff as long as you play good football the rest of the season. Do you see any sort of potential speed bumps in Indiana and Maryland?
No, not even a little bit. Nothing against those teams. Indiana's regressed, which is unfortunate. It seemed like that program was building to something positive, and last year was a significant step back. That Penix stretch still bothers me from 2020.
Yeah, yes. I can very much agree with that.
Like once I saw Washington was coming to the Big Ten in 2024, I was like, I think Penix will be ineligible by the time that happens. I don't know how many years eligibility he's got left, but I'm like, I don't want to see Penix again. That was a nightmare situation, and he was out of bounds. Anyway,
sure.
Yeah, I don't feel much of a threat about Indiana. That was a game last year on the road. Everybody within Happy Valley was a little frustrated with Sean Clifford, and people were calling for Drew Aller to start that game. And Sean Clifford started the game. They beat him soundly by multiple scores. So Drew Aller got into it late and just kind of added to that lead. And then Maryland, it's the rivalry that doesn't exist. It's all in the minds of Terrapin fans. And, shout out to my buddy Mojo Matadi from our days in WWE together, but there is no rivalry. Penn State fans go to College Park, and there's more Penn State fans at a Maryland football game than there are Terrapin fans. And then the eternal promise of Taulia Tagovailoa, I think the world of his ability. His emotional maturity did not take a step last season. And what I mean by that is that in 2021, it was obvious he has athletic gifts similar to his brother, but perhaps a taller and a little bit more nimble version of Tua Tagovailoa. However, if you pay attention to his tape, when he makes mistakes, when he has turnovers, especially, he gets very emotional. And then he starts making bad decisions. His completion percentage goes down. The turnovers go up. That didn't get better last season. And then this story that came out during the offseason that some SEC school offered him $1.5 million to transfer.
Crazy.
It lets you understand how difficult it is to find a great quarterback in football, period. College football, the pros, wherever you're looking. Taulia can't do everything on his own. I don't think the supporting cast there is good enough. I think the world of what Mike Locksley is, and he could build that program into something special given time, but I'm just not intimidated by Maryland.
The rest of the way after Michigan is home to Rutgers, and then the annual closing out the season against Michigan State this year in East Lansing.
No, that's Ford Field in Detroit. Nice
that's
little
right. That
update
is right.
with NBC.
Apologies. Yes. So
I'm excited about that.
That'll be fun. Yeah. I think that's, a nice little change of scenery and, obviously still in Michigan going to Detroit. So that'll be a nice little fun way to end the season for the Nittany Lions. I think that at best they run the table, but I don't know, man. When's the last time Penn State went undefeated? It's been probably before my lifetime, I'd have to say. Maybe before yours.
90s, I think maybe the 80s, somewhere in there. I'm
late 80s, early 90s, and one of the last national titles that they won.
Here's the truth of the matter is that Penn State football fans are one of those frustrated, old guard football fan bases, and that it reminds you a lot of the Nebraska football fan base. It reminds you a little bit of the Notre Dame fan base. Notre Dame's had more recent success overall in terms of getting to those big games altogether, national title games especially. But it's one of those fan bases that it's like, man, we're approaching nearly 30 years since the football team's last national championship, and people like myself are like, man, it'd be cool to see one in my lifetime. And my mom, who is a graduate class of 78, is also like, yeah, I'd like to see another one in my lifetime. That'd be cool. So it's been something that people have been frustrated with for a long time. And this isn't always a James Franklin thing. This is when Joe Paterno was still alive. And there were some down years in the late 90s into the early 2000s, and things roller coaster as they always do. And of course, the Sandusky scandal in 2011 into 2012 is just an absolute nightmare and nearly the death knell for the program. James Franklin has done a remarkable job getting this program to where it is today. I don't think people are making a big deal enough of what he did last season to get this team to win the Rose Bowl, finish 11-2. I think for a lot of people, it just flew under the radar, and a lot of people are trying to find excuses as to why they did what they did. You know, Cam Rising getting hurt for Utah in the Rose Bowl. That wasn't really the game it could have been, or something like that. Like, fair. You know, you can join Deebo Samuel in complaining about the NFC title game. It's like, oh man, we should have won. Well, you didn't. It's okay. That's how things go. So I think James Franklin inherited an absolute mess, a something to be built from the ground up, and he's done that and has taken a university, an athletic department, a board of directors, you name it, a community that's very much embraced tradition, and that our pride and what we are as a community and what we provide in terms of education and our football prowess is enough. And we live in this era of NIL where your best is not enough and you need to do more. And I think James Franklin has done a lot to move this team into the future. And I've talked to my co-host Justin King about it on our podcast, State of State, is that he thought the world of what the team could have been in 2020, and the pandemic just absolutely shellacked things for this team and a lot of other teams as well. So now this is the realization of an extremely deep football team that James Franklin nearly had together 3-4 years ago. And let's not forget also about that team that we thought we were looking at after the 2019 Cotton Bowl victory against Memphis. Micah Parsons was just figuring out how to play linebacker. Journey Brown was, looked like the next great Penn State running back. Sean Clifford, we really didn't know what he was at that point. We were kind of getting a feel for what he could have been. And so many other options, so many other weapons on that team. So I'm really excited about what this season can be, man. It's just those two big ones, like it is every year. Year.
And when, I hear college football experts talk a lot about the expansion of the playoff and whatnot, when that does take place. And, if you look at Penn State's final ranking in the polls, if the, future college football playoff adaptation was what it was throughout, Penn State's the team who's been snubbed the most in these instances where they've been on the cusp or, I expect a lot from them this year. And like I said, this is the most expectations I've had as a Penn State fan going into a season in a while. And that's not trying to bash like Sean Clifford or anything like that. Although, I did see a lot of Packers fans tweeting the other night about, my goodness, this Sean Clifford guy's a roller coaster. And I was like, yeah, welcome to the lives of Penn State fans for the last 3 years.
Right.
Bud.
Let me tell you a story.
Let me tell you a story about Purdue last year. I'll give you a roller coaster.
Oh, my God.
You know what? Bless him for getting drafted. Congratulations to him. And he ended his college career with a Rose Bowl win, which was nice considering, the up and down relationship, the polarizing relationship I think that he had with the fans. But now we get to see what Drew Aller is made of. And that's what fans, are pretty excited about. Not to mention the fact that they have a ton of talent on both sides of the ball, 2 really good running backs. And I'm excited, man. This is a year of expectation for Nittany Lions fans, and it's nice to have expectations.
Yeah, and again, I think the thing to keep in mind if you are a Penn State fan watching this is that this is still a pretty young team. There's a nice mix, of course, of veterans and newcomers, but this is potentially the first season for Drew Aller as a starting quarterback. Imagine what he can be in year 2. Imagine what Abdul Carter can be in year 2. Nick Singleton, Katron Allen. The list goes on. And by the way, there's a very young receiving corps, very young group of tight ends, really, really good young classes of offensive linemen that are just starting to learn and don't have to play immediately, which is just fantastic if you're an offensive lineman at this level. And defensively, they just continue to load up at linebacker, the secondary especially. And that's just where the game is going, is that you got to be able to rush the passer. Of course, you're going to have to be able to stop the football. But especially with these offenses, the likes of Ohio State and hell, the way, Tennessee plays, if you can't hold people in the passing game and make a couple of stops here and there, it doesn't matter what you do in conference. And that's the whole thing that James Franklin's been harping on, is that we are trying to do something bigger than just within our conference and getting out of just being that number 3 team. It's trying to get into the college football playoff. And oh, by the way, next season that gets even more difficult. And I know people are saying, well, it's going to be 12 teams in the playoff next year. It's like, yeah, but Penn State within the Big Ten is no longer the lock to be in the top 3 as you get USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington. So now it's like you might be 1 through 7, 8, depending on how things go. It just got a lot tougher.
How long into the season before we start hearing murmurs of teams offering James Franklin more money to go to their school, as we do every year? Was it LSU one year? It was USC another year. What school is going to be the team that's going to inevitably get thrown around in James Franklin rumors?
Oh, that's a great question. Man.
Maybe Texas?
It's tough to tell with Texas. And like, I don't buy Texas just yet because Sark is he's still kind of sunk his teeth into it. And like, I know a lot of people are like, oh, Texas could make a run this year. I'm like, no.
We've heard that for how long though, man?
Man, I'll never forget the Joe Tessitore call when I think Texas beat Notre Dame at home in overtime, and Swoops was the quarterback. Forget what his first name was. Forgive me. But the call was Texas is back. Yeah. And they wound up being 7-5 that season. Texas isn't back yet. And I think it'd be a great thing for college football if they were back.
Oh, absolutely.
To your point, Oklahoma.
Oh, that's a good shout.
Brent Venables, for the longest time, known as the greatest defensive coordinator, maybe the best coordinator in college football, and was the highest paid coordinator in college football at Clemson under Dabo Swinney, has struggled to kind of get things going in Oklahoma. Maybe it's just not the right fit for him. For Oklahoma to pull the trigger on him this quickly, I would be very surprised. But still, that's a program where they just, heading into the SEC, they are not about to accept mediocrity. I don't think you're going to hear murmurs of James Franklin going anywhere unless they lose to both Ohio State and Michigan. So by mid-November would be when it's like, hey, maybe there is a ceiling here. And honestly, I don't expect to hear that. And considering the contract extension that he got, he's a Pennsylvania guy. He cares about the program. And he finally has the alignment that he wants, that he's been pushing for nearly 10 years, with Dr. Neely Bendapudi, the president of the university. Pat Kraft, as the athletic director, is a freaking bulldog and is doing everything humanly possible to move all athletics forward for Penn State. I think that the framework of the entire institution is exactly how Franklin wants it and needs it. So why would you let that go?
Sure. If you had to bet on a record for Penn State, what's the number?
10-2. 10-2. Yeah. And as much as I want to be optimistic, I really do. I think best case scenario, this team is 11-1. I think there is a possibility you go into Ohio State. You have maybe a young quarterback for Ohio State that struggles. You get into a shootout and you manage to get past them. The Michigan game makes me nervous still. The way that they can run the football, Corum and Edwards, if they are at full strength. And I expect J.J. McCarthy to have matured and improved. There were elements of his game that he clearly needed to work on and be more than just an athletic quarterback who could run a little play action. They need him to step up and do more and be able to break down defenses a little bit better. So I don't know. That Michigan game worries me. And like at the absolute worst, I know there's people who are like, ooh, Illinois and Iowa, maybe they wind up 8-4. That's like the absolute worst. And that's the sky is falling for Penn State.
Yeah. It does seem in recent memory, though, that the home team of the Michigan-Penn State game does seem to have, like, it's not even that they win, but like the last few times that Penn State has gone to Michigan, they've got thumped, man. Like, it's not just, oh man, they let it slip away. They got destroyed. Even when the game is in Beaver Stadium, like Penn State has tended to win those games recently, but they do tend to come down to the wire. Minus the game, what was it, when Saquon Barkley went for a touchdown, the first play from scrimmage? That one got a little bit out of hand in favor of Penn State, though.
Yeah.
That was nice.
It was fun while it lasted there for a minute.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. It's so hard to tell right now, and it does come down to a few little things, like I mentioned. But yeah, I think Penn State fans would have felt a little bit better had that been a whiteout game at home at night. That is a huge advantage. Ask Shea Patterson, former Michigan quarterback, how tough that can be. you're not going to have that. You're going to have a loud crowd for Big Noon kickoff, and that's all well and good, but that would have been an added competitive advantage. Yeah, and I think I don't know. I think Jim Harbaugh is still going to field a really difficult team to deal with on both sides of the ball. Being able to beat Michigan in the trenches is really difficult. And I was pretty astonished to see TCU get past them in the college football playoff because they just were a little bit more athletic and were able to make some plays, and especially defensively holding Michigan the way they did for as long as they could. I was very, very surprised. So we'll see, man. I think that Michigan game is the one that really makes me nervous, and that Ohio State game to me says opportunity.
I like that. Tom Hannifan, always good talking to you, buddy. What do you got going on in the professional realm, state of state, Impact Wrestling, all that fun stuff?
Lots going on. So for Impact Wrestling, this coming Sunday, August 20th, we'll be live exclusively on Fight right in my backyard in Philadelphia at the 2300 Arena. We're coming together with New Japan Pro Wrestling for Multiverse United 2, For Whom the Bell Tolls. That will be so much fun. And then the following Sunday, August 27th, we'll be live in Toronto for Emergence. That'll be on Impact Plus, Fight TV, YouTube for our Ultimate Insider. So we have a very busy, ambitious 2023 schedule. Impact's gotten back to being worldwide. We were recently doing shows in Australia. We'll be doing shows in the United Kingdom at the end of 2020, at the end of October, excuse me. So those were very exciting. Then for Justin King and I on State of State, we have some really exciting interviews that we've gotten lined up. We have one that's going to be airing in a few weeks with Journey Brown, who I mentioned a number of times. He has not done many interviews since walking away from the game of football due to a heart condition. This was one of the most emotional interviews that I've ever gotten to do as a sports broadcaster, and it was an honor and a privilege to be a part of it. So for anybody that wants to know about the story of Journey Brown, check out State of State anywhere you get your podcasts, YouTube as well. And we're looking forward to diving into this season. Like, we're going to be busy. We are looking forward to collaborating with a lot of different platforms and trying to get ourselves out there as much as possible. And, you know, one of the things I love, Jarrett, is that our official beer is back. The State IPA, created by Funk Brewing, is going to be out as of, I think, August 31st. So awesome. If you want a tailgate and game day beer, it's literally one of the proudest things in my career. So you got to find it.
I assume that they're going to be sold in State College, correct?
That is the plan. We are working our way into a number of bars and restaurants in the State College area. So I'll even pull up the website here for you if you just give me 2 seconds. I just want you all to know where to go find it, just so I don't have it wrong. www.funkbrewing.com/beers/state-IPA. So again, that's going to be available August 31st. Beer distributors, grocery stores, select bars and restaurants. You head to that website, it'll tell you where to find it.
Be able to go to my Giant in the Beer Cave and get your beer. That'll be. Hey, I don't need convinced to come to a tailgate and throw back a few. So if that is an invitation, I will gladly take it.
You'll have my stupid cartoon face on the side just to keep you company. It'll be great.
Your face is on it?
Yeah, the show logo's on the side of it, and
that's fantastic.
All credit to the Funk Brewing guys. They have our faces on the side with the show logo, and then a QR code. So if you're drinking the beer and you want to listen to a preview of whatever game you're about to go into or something like that, or a recap, you could just scan the can you're drinking and listen to the show.
That's incredible. All right, you've talked me into it. I will go out of my way. I will go out of my way to find this, and I'll tweet it at you, or was it Zed it at you whenever I.
So like, are we done calling it Twitter?
I don't think so. I think that, it's kind of like, what's a good description? Like, Heinz Field is still Heinz Field in the eyes of Pittsburghers, even though it's Acrisure Stadium now. Like, everybody still calls it Heinz Field. I'm still going to call it Twitter. I think everybody still refers to, like, the Facebook company as a whole as Facebook, not Meta.
That hasn't taken. Yeah, I haven't gotten with that yet.
No.
But
our racist uncles probably still call the Washington Commanders the Washington Redskins. So yeah, similar to that,
Yeah, it's I'm still in the mind of that for Pittsburgh. It's Three Rivers Stadium, and I've never even been there. So like the Heinz Field thing didn't even take for me. I'm like, oh, Three Rivers. Oh, okay, cool. We'll go there.
That's good stuff. What you got some? You're an Eagles fan, correct?
Yes. Used to be the Vet. Now Lincoln Financial Field. Yeah. So the link kind of stuck. That's a good one, and it was a much needed upgrade from the Vet. As much as I have some wonderful memories there, and a lot of people do. It was an old stadium that needed to get torn down.
Say, I've got the old Kelly Green right next to me. They're
There
bringing
you
that
go.
back this year.
Oh my God. They need to go to that permanently.
Oh, absolutely. I think every 90s uniform just needs to come back full time. I think that's the lesson I've learned this summer.
Well, you've got even like the creamsicle Buccaneers. You got the old Elway Broncos helmet. You know, you got there you go. Yeah, isn't it funny this year? All the new uniforms are just the throwbacks from when we were kids, and it's like there's no innovation when it comes to uniforms. Like the Cardinals,
here's the thing, man:
red shirts and red pants.
I think that
still gonna buy it. Still gonna buy it.
Yeah, I think through different eras, like, you know, in the early 2000s, everything was all right. It was the weird like template uniforms where everything was like, okay, we'll make this part of the jersey this color and this part another color, and it'll be, you know, new. I think that now I think as a whole, humans are very nostalgic, and nostalgia is a powerful drug. And anytime you see something from, you know, the 90s, it kind of hits you and you're like, man, that was really cool. I like bright colors in football. And I think that mostly it's become more of, you know, just darker neutral colors. And I want stuff that pops. I think that most fans are seeing all this and like, oh yeah, let's have stuff that pops. Make some, you know, unique again. And I think that the NFL is starting to realize that and allowing teams to be more creative and bring fun stuff back, which is good.
As much as I am a traditionalist when it comes to football, I do like to see new jerseys, some innovation, change things up, and little homages here and there, I think are important. And I've talked about this in the past on State of State. Just once, doesn't have to be every year, but just once, if you're doing a home whiteout, wear all white. It's never been done before. I know there are a lot of Penn State fans out there like, that's sacrilegious, and Joe would say that, blah, blah, and even James Franklin probably will never do that. Never. But I think optically it would look absolutely amazing.
Awesome.
And then I will also say this, and this is for real diehard Penn State fans. We have the whiteout. And now everybody's ticked off that we're doing a whiteout for a game that we don't want it to be going on, right?
Sure.
Do a blackout. And remember that the original colors for Penn State were pink and black. Give me black helmets, black jerseys, black pants, black shoes, black socks, pink numbers, pink stripe on the helmet. One night only. Hell, do it in October. You can auction everything off. So that's part of Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Do something good for the world. I'm very okay with that. But hell, there's options for Penn State, and it doesn't just have to be the same old, same old. So I would like to see those steps. I know they'll never happen. It's just me yelling into a vacuum. But
I remember, I mean, when Bill O'Brien put names on the back of jerseys, there was an uproar from Penn State fans.
That was a big deal. Yeah. And I remember that season fondly, and that was extremely special. And hell,
I remember the guy who I remember most from that season, Mike Motti, the linebacker.
I've interviewed him many times. They put his number 42 on the side of the helmet after he got hurt at a season-ending injury. It was heartbreaking, and he's one of the most beloved Penn State football players ever.
That was a special season for a lot of different reasons. Who was McGloin the quarterback that year?
Yes, in 2012.
Yeah. Goodness gracious. 11 years ago already. I'm getting old, John.
We're getting old.
Buddy, this is a lot of fun to do with you. Definitely going to be doing this more, not just college football stuff, but definitely linking up to do a lot of fun stuff. I appreciate you as always, and we'll catch up down the road, bud.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me on, man.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in to the special college edition, or Penn State edition, I suppose, of the Pump Fake. See you later on in the week. We got Trivia Bowl coming. Tom Hannifan, you can be a guest on Trivia Bowl whenever you want, by the way. I'll tell you all about that later.
Very exciting.
But yeah, everybody, appreciate you for tuning in, and we'll talk soon.